I've got my wine. I've been perpetually getting drunk on every single one of these.
Roxy has her wine, so you know what that means. It's time for Building a Dark Web.
Yes!
1.3, discussing chapter 3.
I hope my mom's not watching this. She hates it when I drink.
She should be a guest on this.
Oh, yeah.
So, our special guests this week are Lars Lindstrom, DP. We've got Mario Miscione, as always, writer, EP, director. Roxy Shih, director, writer. And joining us this week as well is Zelda Williams, writer, director, producer, and thespian, star of her segment called Zero, which she also wrote, directed, and produced. And
Josh might walk in at any point too. So if he does, that's Josh, who also helped produce our segment.
And Josh Thurston, her producing partner, and it was actually like a huge asset in making Zero come to life. So bring him in here.
I'll try. He's maybe sleeping.
He can tell us all about the trials and tribulations of finding all those locations, because I remember that was like a crazy time. Okay. So thank you all for joining us. And Tim Nardelli is lost in the worldwide, he's lost in the dark web right now, but he will soon be joining us on Zoom, hopefully with more light. All right, so first up, Zero opens chapter 3 right away. So it's our first anthology that actually like opens an episode of the show. What was your inspiration for the look of the episode? I know what it is, but people watching may not know.
Who's going first?
Zelda.
You go first, Lars, because that's the look is more you.
No, I actually was going to say that our meeting that we had before we shot the episode was entirely your idea of making it look like a video game, and I had to even look up some references because I don't play a lot of video games, but just that it's such a narrow field of view, right? And so like when you're kind of panning around as a video character, everything else kind of falls off to blackness. So trying to figure out how to pull that off, I think creating those lights in the helmets was like just the clear that, and the phone, it was like one source of light coming from the main character.
Here's Tim.
Yeah. And everything kind of falling off into blackness, which is you kind of get a little bit nervous as a cinematographer when someone says, "Yeah, we want it to fall off into blackness, total blackness." So that was my concern. But coming into it, I think it's one of my favorite episodes looking wise. It's so neat and kind of stands out, I think. Go ahead, Zelda.
Oh, I had kind of loosely based it, especially because the original feature script was not at all having anything to do with technology. So we were adapting it to fit into what was kind of dark web's parameters. So it was basically like turning some of the things from the feature script into what would have been a horror video game, kind of like Silent Hill, which is why we have the typewriter in there. Oh, my dogs are coming to say hi.
Of Silent Hill.
Speaking of creepy doors opening, come here, guys. Yeah, I know. So that's why there's the typewriter in there, because in the
like Belle, that kind of looks kind of like my dog.
This is Betty. The typewriter's in there because that's how they saved in that video game. And it was really fun just to play around with the concept of, especially as someone who really likes escape rooms, you know, they are immersive and there's a lot of stuff there's a lot of work they put into them, but also at the same time, it's not like it's an entirely built out world. You know, there's certain doors you're supposed to go through, and there's certain directions you're supposed to go. So it makes it really fun to try and almost make it seem at moments like a set. Because it's meant to, in the end, be something that is false and created.
Have you done any of those real life ARG things that I've seen?
No, I don't tend to like the digital ones, at least not yet. I've tried them and it wasn't for me. I think also because I'm nearsighted. And so a lot of the stuff that has to do with VR doesn't suit people like me. It gives me a headache. But the escape rooms are great.
Yeah, it does feel like an escape room, actually. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
And so the big thing with Zero is your character never speaks.
Yeah.
So what does silence mean to you? And why was that a theme of the episode, your segment, the episode? and why did you choose to not speak, your character?
I based essentially my character's functioning on Link from The Legend of Zelda. because he never spoke. Specifically, in case, hold on, let me close it now that you're going to hear all these war noises behind me. One sec.
Are there bombs going off in your family room?
How'd you go?
We're watching the Great Escape.
Link in the Legend of Zelda video games never spoke either, because it was meant to be the link between the players and the actual game in and of itself. And so I wanted to, at least for the duration of when I'm on the screen, before I get replaced with Hannah, who was playing my player, so to speak, was to be more of an avatar for whoever was watching. It's harder with movies. There's a reason why people in movies speak and people in video games sometimes don't, because you are actually choosing what the character does. But that was the attempt at kind of portraying what Link ended up representing. Because he never speaks. I mean, he says like, hey, and like cuts down bushes and breaks pots, but he doesn't have conversations as a character.
Very emotive grunts and moans.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Mario's a big gamer too. I used to be more of a gamer. I'm trying to get back into. I just got Death Stranding. So what do you, and Tim's a gamer. So what is your feeling about, like, are you more inspired by games these days than films? And do you see that kind of taking more of a role in your work? Is all your work going to be sort of influenced by gaming, or like what's the gaming in your life like these days?
I'm just gonna disappoint a bunch of nerd fans, but no, I don't really play video games anymore. I don't have time. Even in the middle of this pandemic, I've mainly been writing. I've been directing like socially distant music videos as well, where there's like 3 people on set and you're doing 7 jobs, but I really actually enjoy the challenge of it. Most of my scripts, I would say, are more inspired by science fiction movies and aliens and things like that. So that's more where my head's been at. This was really fun to play with because it wasn't as well, even the feature that was written long before. I really love watching Lars's screen because there's so much that's been happening.
So many things running across the back.
Like a full cat highway behind you. This script wasn't even based on a video game originally. And so to have adapted it to be about something that I do know about and was, raised in, was really fun, but it didn't even initially come from that place. So that was a really fascinating challenge for what was my first narrative thing. It's certainly not something I think I'll probably have to do very often. So I enjoyed having to shift what was even the inspiration behind the initial idea.
Yeah, that happened with a lot of the anthology stories. Like they all existed kind of as their own thing, and they, for the most part, stayed as their own thing. But there were certain little things that had to conform to the rest of the show. Symbols and themes and lines of dialogue and everything like that. And that was a fun part of developing that story with you. So as you mentioned, it was the first thing you directed, and one of the things we talk about a lot on this show, and it's kind of started with when we went to Comic-Con, a lot of the people in the audience wanted to know, like, how did you make an indie TV show, and how do you make an indie full-length, season indie TV show on an indie budget? So what would you do differently if you had this all to do it again?
Wow. Lars, you want to take that one first?
I don't.
He's like, no.
No, you got to answer that.
Because we've talked a lot, like in previous episodes, like about, oh God, like we would have prepped the shot different, because the VFX was like the big learning curve for Mario, Tim and I and Roxy. It was like, oh, we'd prep these shots different, or we'd, have more schedule, or, plan the day a little differently, blah, blah, blah. We want to try to like take our life lessons and give back to the people that may be watching this and enjoyed the series and wanted to know how we put it together and everything from like the film school sort of point of view.
Perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm very happy with the fact that I think aside from the gunshot wounds appearing and then one blood splatter shot, there was no real special effects in ours. It was all practical, which is something that I've since continued to focus on. It's definitely what in everything I've filmed since is all very much the same. so I wouldn't do that. I don't know. I'm looking for things that I would change, but I think my brain functions in such a way as like where I'm at now is very much a testament to the places where you've come from. So a lot of what we did was very helpful in being and doing what I am now. So I don't think I would change it. It was a very interesting way to start. I will say, for people that are like coming into this industry wanting to create their ideas, there's always going to be things that you have to compromise on. But I will say probably doing an anthology series is the first thing you ever do is a really hard thing to jump into. I'd done only a music video or two before that. And so when you're coming into something that there are so many expectations and things that have to tie into other things, I would imagine it would be easier to do a short first, or to do your idea first, so you can even figure out how to defend your position on the things that you like and pick the hills you're going to die on when focusing on other people's kind of influences, because it's a lot of influences to take in at once. But that said, it's, you know, I can't go back and do my own thing first. Doing this instead was a really great, weird, fun learning experience, to know that your thing has to kind of exist among 20 other things and take part in a larger idea. I would just imagine for anyone new coming in, I don't want to warn them against working, but I would say, like, try making a short with your friends first.
Yeah, it's always a good idea.
Yeah.
in your back pocket.
Yeah.
So my last question for you is, technology obviously plays a role in your life, video games and social media and stuff like that. It's a evolving tapestry of our life. What if you were doing...
relationship for me.
What?
I said it's an evolving relationship for me. You're going to get a good kick out of the other answers you're going to get for this question.
Complicated relationship. If you were doing a season 2 anthology or an episode, do you have ideas what it would be about? Is there parts of the internet or technology that you would focus on? Just curious. Where you are with that these days.
I mean, my life has gone fairly tech free now. I've quit pretty much every form of social media. I'm one of those people now who doesn't take their phone with them to work. And the video game thing is mostly out of my life. So, I mean, I feel like there's a version of this that you can approach, which is why are so many people so afraid of walking away from things that are potentially more negative for them than positive, especially social media. I don't know a single person who really loves it anymore, but everyone is so shocked when people walk away from it. Like, I have multiple friends that thought I wasn't okay because I deleted all my pictures on Instagram in January, but I didn't announce anything. What would be the point? But I have friends that then call me up months later being like, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, dude, I did that like 6 months ago, which is wild to think that much time has passed. But I think if there were anything for me philosophically to approach in this, it would be why so many people are afraid of unplugging. Like, what do they think they're missing out on? When I think previous to this, people's happiness wasn't as dictated by being witness to so many other people's projections of their lives, whether that's like hanging out with their friends or, you know, I have friends right now who are really deeply upset by the amount of people who aren't taking this pandemic seriously, or the amount of people who aren't doing enough what they see as performative activism, because everything on social media is performative in one way or another. But because they see them not posting enough about a thing, they're like, well, then they must not care enough. And you're like, well, what if they just don't care about social media? So there's this really weird, stormy thing that's happening to a lot of people's psyches and a lot of people's happiness based around something that I don't think is a necessity, but everyone's convinced themselves it is somehow.
You make
that's probably where I go.
A good point for the dark web not existing, because like some of the episodes focus on the idea of like with the web in general on social media being a dark web themselves, which you've obviously witnessed and experienced. It sounds like, and so do you feel like you're happier without it in your daily life?
Certainly calmer. I mean, I can't say that there's any curative, you know, the way that people feel when they're upset or depressed or any number of different things, but it's nice not to feel like I'm plugged into an enormous amount of stimulus that isn't really all that important. Like I remember feeling very sad or missing people or jealous when there were people hanging out without you, and you're like, oh wait, less than 10 years ago I wouldn't have been privy to this information and I would have been fine.
Yeah.
Because people are going to hang out without you, or people are going to go and do stuff without you, or they're going to do whatever they want, but we're suddenly privy to the version of people selling an idea of what they're doing. And yeah, it's nice not to have that anymore, for sure.
I have a title for your episode then. Digital Detox. The episode. Somebody at a digital detox, and something still has to go wrong. I don't know what it would be. It wouldn't have, if somebody sneaks in a phone or something, you know.
Yeah.
I do think social media and technology is like the new drug of choice for a lot of people. So
I mean, there's literal rehabs for people that play video games too much. There were people who were dying because they would not stop playing video games and they would dehydrate. Like, that's bonkers to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's spoiler alert for our last, but that's pretty much what happens to our main character in the show. Is it's sort of she dies at her computer, and it was sort of a metaphor for how we all get sucked in. We lose track of time, like sit down to do one thing, and then it's like you get drawn into 8 different conversations or emails and things. It's no good. And yet here we are on Zoom, keeping it going.
Well, this feels like a human connection necessity in these times. Like, at the very least, you can still communicate with people in a way that feels somewhat face-to-face, because otherwise I feel like people are just doing the throwing things at each other thing, which is social media. Like, you're not actually communicating with anyone, you're communicating as an extroversion, and they're communicating as an extroversion. It's like, it's not a conversation.
Yeah, I was thinking that, like, if we had this pandemic before Zoom or Skype and it would be a much different thing than it is now. Like, we can almost keep up, you know, normal affairs with Zoom and everything, but before this we would have been screwed.
Well, they have had
better, actually, who knows.
Yeah, they've had pandemics before that didn't have tech, and, you know, yes, they were hard. Like, look at what happened with the Spanish flu and resurgences, because people were so excited to leave their homes. So if anything, maybe this will help us actually navigate in a healthier way, hopefully, of like not just suddenly going like, woohoo, it's done. And everyone else is like, no, it's not. They're like, I don't care. Like, at least with this, we're not entirely separated. But I do think it's affecting imagination too. Conversation for another time.
Yeah, in a good way, bad way?
Bad way. I don't think people are being as imaginative because they're just being presented with constant stimulus and things that they're supposed to aspire to and things that they're supposed to believe is a utopian or dystopian experience. And so they don't really have to fill their time with imagination anymore. I can't tell you, I don't know if this will be a fun experiment for the people who are on this call. When was the last time you read a full book?
Oh, all the time. I'm doing it now. I'm reading 3 different books right now.
But we've got a couple others now.
Nobody else? I'm actually reading.
No, I recently finished my book. I have my Kindle. I am a reader. So thank God for that, honestly, during this quarantine. I agree, Zelda. You dropped so much knowledge regarding like social media and like how evil it is, a constant stimuli. Like, I feel like everyone's just plugged into each other. What you're saying 1 minute could be wrong. When you're just trying to do the right thing, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. It's just like a constant echo chamber.
And it's not a dialogue either. So the people that you're dealing with, it's basically like being on one tower and someone holds up a banner and then the other person on the other tower holds up a banner. It's as simple. It's like, the projection is very simplified in order to exist.
It's creating binaries.
Well, and also one of the worst parts about social media is that because you're not face to face, you're not, you know, it's not even a Zoom thing. It's very easy to be awful to each other. And it's very easy to treat someone like they're not a real human being and say things that you would never say to a person in real life. Some people would. Some people are this awful in real life, but a lot of people aren't. And so, you know, there's a layer of protection that comes from having that screen between you two that some of our worst instincts are really amplified and like sort of the worst things you could say to people. And the conversations regarding everything become so heightened and become so polarized. We can't talk about politics. We can't talk about art. We can't talk about anything because everyone has opinions, and anyone who disagrees, you're trash or this or that. It becomes so difficult to connect over social media because it's so easy to be awful to each other, I have found.
Well, and there's no empathetic response. You don't see the thing that you're doing to other people, and you can unfortunately too, people don't realize when you say something out loud, you do tend to think about it longer than you're actually considering. When you type something out, people can send things or retweet things without half a thought. But the book thing actually came from so many of my friends. We were talking about it, and a lot of them had not read like an actual novel, especially people in our industry, had not read a fiction or nonfiction book in forever. And they would like buy them and they would start them, but then they would get a script, or then they would do, and they just, and scripts are almost by nature pretty unimaginative because they need to describe what they're going to be doing. And then it's like just bare bones dialogue, and then very little, especially the way that most people write scripts now. They're not imaginative. They don't want you to put adjectives. They don't want you to put
we've been taught to write them so blandly. You know, everyone says, oh, don't have any sort of fun with the script, that everyone's afraid to now.
Yeah. And I hope that changes as well. I genuinely do hope
the best scripts I've read they've played with style, they've had kind of fun with the writing. Those are the best scripts to read.
Yeah. Moonlight was wonderful. If anyone hasn't read Moonlight, you should read the Moonlight script. It's like poetry. It's amazing. But that's a very rare thing. So there's a lot of people in our industry who, without really realizing it, it's not a conscious decision. They haven't read anything that had to challenge their imagination in a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I read that actually, that a lot of people thought they were going to read more books during this, but they're just so stressed and tired that they're turning to like, you know, Netflix and streaming and everything. That's too bad.
There's a lot of distractions.
Too bad. Yeah. Gotta get a good, I'm burning my way through War and Peace. Actually, I literally, and this book called Magus. I don't know how to say it, but it's really good.
It's funny that we are talking about script writing, because a book that I was trying to read just a couple of months ago was Save the Cat.
I like that book.
That is a good book.
It's a great one.
All right.
I've been reading Hollywood biopics. So I'm working my way through a bunch of things about like people in 1950s and 1980s Hollywood, so that at the very least, as it changes as rapidly as it is right now, I'll be informed about where it came from in order to even be where it's going. So they're really interesting. If anyone ever wants to read any, you can borrow them from me.
What you got? Which ones you got?
So you would actually really like this one. Hold on.
I'm curious. I would.
Zelda's so cool.
I listen to Audible. I listen to books all the time on Audible.
I like Audible.
That counts when I'm good.
So this is Boris Karloff's Horror Man, which is really, really, really fun. It's old. There's other copies. This is just, I managed to find a really old one in online. And then Carrie Fisher's Postcards from the Edge.
Oh yeah, I've read all. I haven't read that. I read all of her autobiographies though.
She's
or all
fabulous.
of her memoirs, I guess you call them.
This one's really interesting. I've heard that there's a mixed thing about, because it's so hard to learn anything about her, that essentially there might be some misinformation in this, but I don't know if any of you know anything about Millicent Patrick. She was the woman who actually designed the creature from the Black Lagoon. And then because of the sexism that she faced via the guy that said he wanted to take credit for it and did take credit for it, she essentially left Hollywood and completely disappeared and went to live a normal life. But she's who literally sculpted. There's all these great pictures of her sculpting. Let me see if I can find one.
Sounds like a good story for a movie.
Yeah. The problem is there's not much about her life, so you would kind of be inventing stuff. But she was this incredible woman, and there's very rare pictures of her, but all of them are her by hand sculpting the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Was she referenced in like movies like Ed Wood at all, or like have we...
I don't think so.
That sounds like a good one.
She might have been. It was really fun. But I've been reading that primarily when I'm not doing my own writing. But I don't know. I have hope that people will find their way back to big, imaginative, strange things. It just seems like everything's gotten so literal.
Yeah. And I also think like there's a lot of content just getting churned out these days that doesn't have a lot of love behind it, but it's like, you know, it's easier to make stuff now, technically, you know, equipment's more accessible, and streamers are, people are always hungry for the newest, best toy to come out. So, and Roxy's pouring another glass, getting ready for more.
I always finish a bottle by the end of this.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And you have it, that shot composed so well with the glass in the foreground.
Oh, there needs to be foreground, midground. I don't know what it's called, Larsy. Background.
And it's white wine this time. Well, Zelda, we wanted the response or, courtesy of your time. Thanks for joining us. And we know you have
Thank you, Zelda.
another Zoom to jump onto.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You're
And
so
it was so nice to see you.
Thank you for everything and great work. Enjoy your travels on the World Wide Web to this other Zoom channel.
Oh, right. I was like, I'm not going anywhere else on the web. It scares me now. I mean, now it's become a horror film for me. Ironically, given what we made, the web is now a place that I'm like, I'm not going to go there for a while. I need some space from it.
Well, we saw that coming. I mean,
yeah.
Didn't call it dark web for no reason.
Have fun, you guys. It was really nice to see you all.
Take care.
Bye, Zelda. Take care.
Stay safe. Stay well.
You as well. Okie dokie.
I'm so excited that Lars is here. We can
And
talk
then there were
about
5. All right. So don't worry, Lars. I got tons of questions for you too.
Oh boy, I hope I can remember them.
Yeah, it was a while ago, huh, for you?
It was a little bit.
You've been working on a lot of other stuff since then, haven't you?
Been a lot.
Cheating on us. You've been cheating on us.
Cheating. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So what was the big difference between working on dark web and other stuff that you've done? Because you've done, TV, film, commercial.
Yeah. So I
What
think
else?
the big difference for me was that there was clear instruction to have a different kind of vibe for all the anthologies. So there was the main episodes and then the anthologies within the episodes. And there was like, I think I shot 2, maybe 3 of the anthology episodes, but they were intentionally supposed to have a different look or vibe. And so for me, that was not a struggle. It was fun. It was really fun. Because I always think that as a cinematographer, yes, you have your own styles and some of that does come out, but I try to be as much of a chameleon as possible. You want to be able to listen to a director and producers and say, what can I do to make sure their vision is completed? And you don't want to just have like a one trick up your sleeve kind of cinematic style. So that was for me. It was really fun to kind of to stretch those muscles a little bit. But the other differences, there was, we did separate the A story from the anthologies with quite a bit of time. So it was fun for me even because I feel like I'm still young and I'm still learning quite a bit to kind of look back and go, I think I got better as time went on. Like every time I came back and shot another thing, it was like, oh, I think I did that not necessarily better, but I was faster. We had just kind of like an easier time setting it up. Like when we shot Mario's anthology, I feel like
We'll get to that. We'll bring you back on that, but keep going.
But I just felt like we were quicker. Zero was completely different than anything else I've ever shot, actually ever before. First of all, we had practically no lighting package. Part of that was intentional, part of that was budget. But like literally I showed up, I had like 4 C stands and like a few LED lights. I mean, that was like it. And so trying to make it look moody and kind of give it a vibe and still deliver a nice raw file that the colors had room to work on was tricky. It was a challenge because the space was huge, especially the finale.
Oh yeah,
down that massive hallway, and it's like an abandoned courtroom or something like that.
Which, fun fact, there was a giant fake marble made of styrofoam statue that had like a giant dick on it. So they had to move that.
Why didn't you keep it in the show?
I mean, you could have, but I think it definitely it drew your attention in a way that I don't think Zelda wanted to. So she had to move. But it's those, the big atrium windows, and there was this giant statue with a huge dick.
Just would have been silhouetted.
We got to move that.
Is that a metaphor? I think it's a metaphor.
Probably metaphor.
It is. I don't know what it's a metaphor for, but
we can make it into a metaphor.
But it is. There's a lot of subtext in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, it was
Figure it out for yourself.
just a massive space, and we had just such a small lighting package. like I mentioned before that the helmets were our key light and the cell phones. I got both of those lights on Amazon. It's like the helmet lights were like $8 with
You
double.
rigged those, right? Like the costume didn't come like that. You
Yeah, I
rigged
put them in there, and it was like kind of. I mean, I'd done like a small camera test in my house before I showed up, but we rigged them on the day. Like I showed up and I made sure they weren't flickering. And we showed up on the day, and we just like stuck them to the inside of the helmets. They just had like this little peel off, like adhesive tape, and we just threw them in the helmets. And then I had a cell phone that I also like a cell phone light. It was a really powerful LED.
Yep, I remember that thing.
Use that for the finale of Transplant when he's going through the halls because we needed his flashlight.
Yep, because Zelda still had it. I think we had to ask her to get it back.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Low budget show, low budget.
$8, $8 was our key light for that show.
But it's amazing, like those lights that you added in the helmet, totally how just, like we've talked about little things on this show, Building the Dark Web, like how adding score totally makes the episode seem so much bigger. And then adding those lights, just those little lights, strip lights, LEDs to the helmet, made it look like a James Cameron movie. And it was like, it felt bigger and more sci-fi, and it just looked so much bigger than it was just with the little lights. I can't tell you like the difference that it made when I saw those go on. I was like, oh, whoa.
That was the whole problem, right? When I first met with Zelda, I was like, wow, okay. So I loved the idea of like a narrow perspective. But I just, beyond a flashlight, which wouldn't have shown the face, I just didn't really, it was the only thing that we could think of that would sell it. And I'm really glad it worked out as well as it did.
Well, I was shocked because we had worked with you on the A story, which we shot in August, and then Zero, I think we filmed in like October and November. So what you were saying about growth, like I remember when I started to see the daily, I was there when you were filming it, but just seeing the shots, I was like, this doesn't even look like Lars is filming this anymore, because the A story had such a specific, which Roxy, you can talk about too, like more grounded in reality look.
Totally.
Kind of a modern day conspiracy thriller look, nothing too fantastical about it. And then I saw Zero and I was like, we'd never know that Lars was the same DP.
Oh, good.
Lars is the jack of all trades and very versatile.
That's what I thank you, Rex. That's what I really hope for. I hope to be a bit of a chameleon, right? You just want to like.
You're Meryl Streep of DPs.
What a compliment.
I know. Roger Deakins is shaking.
He's not Meryl Streep.
Lars is coming up quick. He's like looking over his shoulder. Who's that?
So Roxy and Lars and Mario did, because you worked on Transplant. Break it down, because again, we keep the focus of building the dark web for like the film students, like the indie filmmakers that want to know how we did it. How and get real granular, how did you achieve the different looks? Like cameras, lighting packages, lenses, get deep and use words that we don't understand so that we can learn and people watching can learn too.
I don't know if you know words, Roxy, but I don't know words.
I don't know fucking words either.
Lars will know.
Lars knows all the big words.
Sure. So here's how I can like A story is like this, David Fincher looking thing. Zero was very much video game inspired, had lots of blue tones and darks and shadows. And Transplant was very urban and
Michael's there using those big adjectives.
Huh? I know stuff.
Donk? Oui, donk.
I know stuff. Whatever. Have another glass of wine. Lars, tell us how you did it.
Sure. So even the A story we used two different sets of lenses intentionally. So I don't know if you remember this, Roxy, but everything that took place in a building, we used a much sharper set of lenses. And then you don't remember
what? Can you tell us which lenses they were?
I have to tell everybody what like me and Lars's dynamic is like. Like I would just express what I want, and then he would just have complete. I would just empower him to make the technical decisions, because I don't know them. Honestly, I don't know much about cameras or lighting or anything like that. But we did our work in prep, and then he really made those decisions on the day. And that was that. So, okay, wait, keep going, Lars. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, so anything that took place, I can't remember the name of just like inside and outside of those buildings where she worked.
Emerson?
What was that?
Emerson
No.
College, Citadel.
Emerson College. So everything in Emerson College was very like just kind of sharp, very structured. They're called Lomo Super Speeds. They're Russian lenses that were developed in like the kind of late 2000s, mid 2000s, 2010 I think was when they first came out. But they're much sharper look, and then everything that took place in like the houses and the stories, like kind of the more like the friendships. Those were all vintage lenses shot on some contacts. They're Japanese-made Zeiss Contax lenses that were built kind of in the early '80s, and they just have a different quality. They're a little bit more yellow. They have like a little bit more warmth to them. They're a little softer, so they're just a little bit more friendly, I would say. And so I think it worked really well. You come from like everything in Emerson College was very kind of monotone and very sharp and very structured. And then you have these almost romantic little stories where these high school friends, kind of reunite. And I wanted it to feel a little bit more soft, a little bit more warm and romantic. And I think it worked. I hope it worked.
It worked. You did a great job. And you used two different Alexas. You had on the A-Story shoot, you had the Alexa.
Yes.
What were the names? I forget.
Yeah, we had the Alexa Classic on the A-Story. We had two of them. We shot two camera, which I don't particularly enjoyed doing, but I think it worked super seamlessly on this series. So we had two Alexa Classics with those two sets of lenses, and then for I think for Zero, I can't remember for Zero if we had the Classic.
No, you had the new one. What's the
Amira? I think we used the Amira.
Yeah,
which we also used on Transplant as well. The Amira.
Yep.
And truthfully, they're pretty much the same. They're the same sensor. The processors got better, so the noise floor is a little bit lower, so there's less kind of grain structure in the black tones, and there's more resolution. So the Alexa Classic got us 2K, and the Amira got us 3.2K. So you had, I'm such a nerd. You guys.
I'm like, what are you talking about?
I can tell the difference.
That's what I loved about, and we'll talk about this some more. You can talk about this.
Yeah, because you could reframe, or you could do digital.
Yeah, anything to give me a little more flexibility in post. I love the idea that we were going bigger because I could kind of do push-ins and not lose resolution. Really, I could do a lot of different stuff in post with it. So the 3.2 was great.
Awesome, and that was kind of the idea because we did single camera on both Zero and Transplant, and so we were able to just bring in the Amira because budgetary reasons. I can't remember honestly if it was budget or availability, but we only had one Amira, and so we brought it in, and that was our camera for those.
So did you guys compose your shots wider than you would have normally, knowing that you had the freedom to push in on the?
No, I don't think so. I would generally say that I try to compose a shot exactly how I want to see it in the intermediate, but it is not, like Mauro said, you can almost create two shots, right? If you have a cutting point,
and we did it a couple times in Transplant. There were a couple
handy.
Right, which helps a lot with the schedule too, because you can just fly through shots and scenes, and then in post, if you get in a pinch and you're like, it would be really great to see just like a little bit more close up of this moment here, you can then reframe and
it looked like a different shot, and it was the same shot I just punched in.
Perfect.
So Roxy and Lars, talk about the A-Story, like why you decided to have two cameras. I know the answer, but I want you to talk about two cameras, the block shooting, the way that you shot the A-Story, and aspect ratio, because I think aspect ratio is fascinating. We have different aspect ratios in the show. So talk about, obviously on Zero, it's a full frame, and then with the A-Story, we went for tighter. What is it? No, 6.
239. You almost said
239. Yeah. Talk about it.
239-1. Roxy, you have something you want to say about it? The aspect ratio?
Well, aspect ratio, no. I just know that we shot with a lot of different cameras. Not only did we do the two classics, we also had the Sony A7S for the webcam stuff. In terms of shooting with two cameras, it is an absolute necessity just because of our high page count every single day, and to be able to be more efficient in going through our day. For the most part, blocking wasn't that hard because I think that it was mostly just the character sitting in front of a webcam, and then being able to capture some light blocking. Like the blocking in this series wasn't difficult when it was just the separate characters. Like even when in this episode where Honey, where your character has more movement, you know, it's not so confined to episode 1 and 2 where Brian and Lana were in front of their computers, but like you actually had more traditional blocking. But still, it made it easier for us. Oh wait, we have to talk about that scene. Scene 21.
Yeah, it's on my list of questions.
Oh, okay. Oh,
Jesus
Christ. Okay, and then like, you know, having to talk to Lars. I mean, thank God I had Lars. Like Lars is so on top of everything. Like in terms of what we're shooting, when switching out formats, and like I think that I can lean on Lars so much because I'm actually a hot mess of a person, and like I don't know anything technical, but having someone as like grounded and calm and rooted as him, like it's just so nice to have that kind of visual partner on set. So Lars, I love you. I'm like such a fan of yours, and I'm just so grateful for your friendship and everything.
What is this scene 21? What are you talking about?
That's the one, remember, where it's like James and I'm like switching all of their character names with like their real names.
I think it's scene 23.
It's scene 23. It's the 3-way video chat
Skype in the
that
hospital.
we kept reshooting over and over again.
That never ended. It was about 11 pages. You cut it down a lot in editing, but it was originally like
We
an
kept
11 page,
reshooting it in all those different locations. Like they had to run it through because we had to capture all those.
And it was very plot. It's a lot of context. It introduces Zach, Renee's character, and it kind of shows where I am and where they are, and it kind of sets the rest of the story in motion that they're going to meet up and everything. But it was a pain in the butt to shoot because
That scene was like never wrapped over the course of like 2 weeks.
yeah, I feel like we were still pulling dialogue from it, like at the very end. And then the post of it was terrible.
And we had to have all sorts of like fake search engines, and then they put one
Aquario.
The screen becomes the Renee video, and then it flips back. Like it was and getting like making sure you had exactly the right video go into the screen for each shot was a real pain in the ass too. So like it was a lot of like really fine tuning the pieces of the special effect to make it work, but it turned out good. Yeah,
We're masking out the Apple logo down to the end. And
logos, all sorts of things.
What was the final word on VFXing for screens? White screen, black screen, green screen, no screen. What was the final word?
Well, we did no screen, and it was sort of okay, but sort of a pain in the ass. I think you're supposed to have the white screen with markers, right? With the squares in the corners for tracking.
I think we found that that tracking
would make it a lot easier
with everything, and we didn't have that on a lot of
artists do some things that was like, and we talked about this a little bit in the 4th episode, but just like shots where we were like, how are we going to do this? We struggle forever, and then an artist is like, give me a day, and they come back and you're like, oh, thank God, because we were so screwed if you didn't figure this shot out.
Well, we also since it's the internet and the dark web, I think we used glitches to our favor a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Either if we ran out of footage or if there was an I just remember in that scene we used glitches to our advantage to mask the seams sometimes, and it works because you had the power shuffling off and on, and as we know, internet conferencing isn't always a seamless process to begin with. So Lars is taking a potty break. I have some trivia questions for Tim and Mario. Trivia time! It's trivia time with Dark Web.
Okay, Glenn
Who?
Glenn Sebeck.
Huh?
Wheel of Fortune.
Oh, yeah. Alex Sebeck. Not Glenn. Alex Trebek. Wait, who's the host of Wheel of Fortune? No, that's
Pat Sajak. Wheel of Fortune's Pat
Sajak. What the hell are we talking about? Oh my gosh. All right. As we've talked about, the film we worked on, Circle, we used a lot of alumni from that film, since we now have the Circle Repertory Theater of Actors. How many Circle actors appear in Chapter 3 of Dark Web? And I guarantee you're not going to get this right, because I had to think about it.
Oh, 2.
Nope.
What?
Wait, hold on. Hold on.
1, 2, 3. I want to say it's either,
I'm pretty sure it's 4.
Nope.
yeah, because it was you, the doctor, and
Oh,
then,
I forgot you. Then it's 5.
and then
More.
Renee,
More.
quick scene, and episode
How dare you forget me?
Okay. You don't count.
Oh, Mario.
All right, so here we go. We have Dan Lynch and Emilio
Uh-huh.
are when you're driving in. We have David, who's the doctor, who tells you you're fine. We have you. We also have Renee in the video when he's being dragged out on YouTube.
And you said David, right? You said that.
I said David.
There's
So
one you're not thinking of.
There's other voices, but they weren't in circle.
Are you sure?
I mean,
Does Nurse Margaret ring a bell?
Oh!
Nurse Margaret in episode 4. Oh shit, she's on the phone.
She has a voice cameo in this one.
Nurse Margaret, Amy.
Oh, so evil.
Yes. So
I forgot they call her. I love continuity because we brought her back for 4.
6 Circle alumni appeared
Yeah.
in this episode. We had a little trivia while you were gone, Lars. Okay, back to business. Lars, what would you have done differently looking back on this experience?
I've been better. I would have been better. And
Don't say that.
I will say I'm very happy with the way. And look, it's nominated. The lighting is nominated for an Emmy, so I have to be excited about that. At least there's that.
I didn't even mention that. I should have mentioned that. Lars was nominated for an Emmy for his work on Dark Web. Woo! Lars and Vasiliki.
Well deserved.
Avery, very well deserved. Because I think you shot like probably 70% of the show, I would say, if I had to like guesstimate.
Yeah, that's probably about right. Yeah. So I think if looking back, just experience, right? So I think, and it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to say that if we're not progressing, if we can't look back even a year ago and say, I could have done better, then I think we're not doing the right things, right? So that's what it is for me. If I look back at stuff that I did 2 or 3 years ago, and if I'm not a little bit embarrassed, then I think maybe I'm not learning enough. Maybe I'm not growing enough. And so that's right. I'm very happy with the way it turned out. I think not even considering the circumstances. I think just overall, I'm so stoked on the way it turned out. I think it's a beautiful piece of cinema, and I'm so pleased I was able to be a part of it. But yeah, absolutely. If I could go back and do it again, I would, and I would do it better.
And if you win the Emmy tomorrow night, will you come back on our show and bring it with you?
Absolutely.
Your category gets announced tomorrow night, I'm pretty sure. I mean,
Yeah.
Tomorrow night after the show on social media.
You're honestly obligated to come back, Lars. Let's not lie. If you win an Emmy for this, you're obligated to come back.
You do have to. I want to go back to one thing though, because Roxy, the 2 cameras. People
Yeah.
might be curious why we did 2 cameras on the A story.
Yeah. It's just for coverage, right? So anytime, for those that haven't made a film or thinking about making films, anytime you do a scene, it's broken down into shots, right? So if you've got a shot of over my right shoulder onto Roxy and a shot over Roxy's left shoulder onto me, that's 2 separate shots. And even sometimes we might have a medium shot of Roxy and then a close-up shot of Roxy from the same side. And having 2 cameras, so that's like, and then if you have a 2-shot wide that's looking at both of us, that's 5 shots in a scene. And if the scene's 3 pages long, then you do it once on one side, and maybe you do it 3 or 4 times to kind of get directors satisfied with the performance, and then you get all 5 shots 3 or 4 times, and it can take a long time. And especially when you're trying to do how many 12 pages a day, 13 pages a day, just enormous amount of coverage. Having 2 cameras, maybe on both sides. I like to shoot on both sides. So if I'm doing over my shoulder onto Roxy for the wide and the close up, I'll probably put both cameras behind my shoulder, and that way we get 2 shots taken care of in the same take. And that way we're essentially moving. The idea is twice as fast. Sometimes that doesn't work. because then we've got that wide shot, and I can't, lighting wise, I can't really make the wide look the same as the over the shoulder. So there are some limitations, but for those 2 over the shoulder shots, we can get those done in 2 instead of 4. And that just saves us a lot of time. And there were even times where it was like, if I were getting a wide, I would tell B-Cam, I'd say, go get an establishing shot of this, or can you just go get some like inserts of the stuff on the table, or I need like an insert of like this newspaper article or whatever, and they could be setting that stuff up. And that's time-consuming, tedious work too, like all those inserts and establishing shots. And if you have a separate camera that can be taking care of that while I'm focusing on, the story in a wide shot, that's just so helpful in moving things along.
We had 2 cameras on Circle, and it was invaluable. Like we couldn't have done that movie with a single camera. Just like there were too many pages per day, too many people to cover. It was so great to just have, you could have a wider shot, and then you could have someone just getting kind of more close-ups on some people, and it gave us so much more leeway in editing that it was, when you can do it and when budget allows. I mean, like the one thing I think everyone's afraid of is like, you plan out your shots really well, and if you're just doing so many different camera setups, it feels like, are you taking as much care with each shot? But sometimes it's okay to just have your A cameras, like the camera this is the shot you've developed, and B camera's just getting coverage, just in case.
Exactly. That's how if I have to have cameras, it's like, because I like operating, I operate cameras, and so if I'm gonna do it, I'll have A cam is like my camera, and that's the shot. That's the shot I really want. And then I'll go peek at the B cam monitor, and I'll go, it's good, I like it, like it's fine, but this is the money right here. This is really what I want to focus on. So absolutely. But
a lot of directors don't like the 2 camera, the AB, because it limits how you can light, right? And it kind of, sometimes you fall into like the generic over the shoulder, it's not right. I mean, do you encounter that with other directors where they're like, no, not 2 AB cams, too soapy?
Yeah, I mean, I just personally don't enjoy it as much as just a single camera, because then I can just really focus on what the shot is, you know what I mean, and just do it's exactly right for the shot. Because there's a lot of times where you'll start to sacrifice the composition a little bit on A cam if you've got B trying to squeeze in there, you know what I mean. And I would, for me personally, would rather see if I could just, here's the shot, and this is the exact shot that I want, and then we'll lens up, and then I'll move over a little bit or kind of find the spot, and now this is the exact shot that I want. If time allows. And I'm doing like feature film, TV movies in 12 shooting days, so it's like you can still get a lot with single cam. But I mean, how many episodes we did? How many episodes?
8. But I mean, it feels like, 6 or 14 or something.
How many shooting days was A Story, Roxy?
A Story was like, wasn't it like 150 pages or something?
Yeah, at least.
How many days, shooting days do we have?
About 13.
Oh.
And then you have to remember that 6 and 8 were full episodes, and that was also included in our schedule.
Right.
So it was just like, you have to understand, like, at the end of the day, what the format is and what those expectations are, because I think ideally anybody, and also it's like, honey, when we did like episode 3, it's like we had to go back and do reshoots, because like we remember when we shot the classroom scene with like older kids, because it was supposed to be 18 to look younger, but it didn't make sense, and then like you had to go back and do that. So I think like when you're making whatever it is that you're making, the content, you have to know in your mind exactly what it is that you're making. Like, we're making a TV show. Okay, then these are the parameters. Our budget is this. Like, our parameters are this. And how do we maximize those variables based on these parameters, And then do your best with that. Because, like, at the end of the day, like, if I were to come from a producer perspective, it's like budget and schedule, right? Like, and we have to meet those parameters. And so it's like, well, how do we make it the best it could be while getting everything we need for the edit, right? Because like literally, if we shot this on one camera, it would have been impossible. Like it just would have been impossible. But I think like it was a great learning curve. Like I remember being at Village, and I was just like this all the time. And then Asia, our script supervisor, was also like.
I'm on A camera going.
Yeah.
Like everybody on dark web
looking
felt
over
like
at
that.
me, camera, be like, "Is it good? Is it good?"
Is the shot good? Is it still good? Yeah.
Like it
I
was
was
like,
like-
it was an amazing tango because like I've never done it before, you know.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
The tango, and I was running from like the actors trailer to back to basic actors and then producers.
Yeah.
They're dealing with everybody. But I was gonna say like the two camera, especially on Circle and some other things that I've done, is actually nicer for the actors sometimes, because you are both in the same take together, especially on Circle. Like we were all acting together versus single camera where it's it's on one actor, then you reverse and go on the other. I don't know. It just when you can actually give it all to each other in the one take,
Yes.
nice. Because sometimes like your
Yes.
better take will be off camera, and you're like, damn it, no, I should have saved that for my coverage, and it's like, oh, too late, missed that chance.
We did do a lot of profile shots coverage, right? Or it was just like, so we had two cameras pointing at either character.
Yeah.
Especially like Renee in the psych.
Oh yeah.
With, remind me her name. Brilliant actress. What's her name?
Siobhan. Siobhan Fallon.
Yes. So we did a lot of profile stuff in that scene. So just to kind of make them feel disconnected, because you do over the shoulders, and it's a way of bringing kind of people together. And if you do like a clean profile shot, it's a way of separating them a little bit psychologically. And so there was a lot of profile shots, and that did help us kind of give the actors the ability to give it their all in one take. And I think that worked out pretty well.
Plus, you always have that pretty light behind them. Like especially the scene in 105. You lit Lana really beautifully when she's in the attic. And
Right.
Yeah, it's some glow. It looks great.
Their romance scene.
Their romance that Mario didn't want. We'll get to it. Mario didn't want the kiss. Roxy wanted the kiss.
Yes.
We were always trying to insert a little bit of like sentiment. I was always
like, do they have to?
Yeah, and with the score too, I remember there was like one cue that had a little bit more like romance, and you're like, no, and Roxy and I were like, come on.
You guys,
For all time's sake, let them just do it.
Where is the love? The love. Okay.
This is so boring.
Mark.
James.
Again, it is Mr. Woodsley. Tell me about right triangles. We learned it yesterday.
Yeah, I forgot yesterday.
Yeah, you forget yesterday because you were on your phone the whole time.
So, I could just Google this if you ever have to know it.
Oh, no, you can't.
I'll do it right now.
No, you can't. Because the internet might not always be there for you. Yeah.
No way.
Technology is not as reliable as it was 5 years ago. The internet may seem like it has the answer to everything, but don't you assume that it's going to be there to bail you out in an emergency. Especially with everything happening nowadays. You guys and your apps and your games and your off VR, ARG, retro, escapist, blah, 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 blah. That's not gonna help you out there. No, you guys are missing the forest for the trees.
So, Roxy, you mentioned the classroom scene. That's kind of another infamous scene. So Tim and Mario, the classroom scene, from the perspective of graphics, VFX, compositing, and sound. Because I just remember we were stuck with Kelly, who we should bring Kelly onto the show, at Monkeyland, mixing that scene forever. Because there's so many beeps and boops and blops and creating like the background, the folio, and it's just crazy. And I was thinking today, we added all those graphics after the fact. Like we didn't shoot it with that in mind.
No. Yeah, we
had to reshoot it.
That you guys had shot previously at Emerson with older kids and just.
Well, that's okay. 1 second, because I want to teach a lesson with that too. So we Actors Access and LA Cat, bringing in kind of day players and everything off Actors Access worked really well for Dark Web throughout the shoot, except on that day, because we were looking for a certain age. Obviously, we wanted to hire 18 to play younger, to save money and not have an on-set tutor. But a lot of the pictures that people sent in they looked a lot younger than when they showed up. They all look great, but they
They look
didn't look
adults.
young
Right.
enough
They
to
look
be.
They're like 5 years old, all those headshots.
They looked pretty much my age, so
We all got catfished.
basically, yeah, another lesson from the dark, from the internet. We got catfished. So that's why we had to reshoot that scene.
Yeah, we reshot with kids. And so, one thing the kids are doing in this scene is they're playing with their phones and they're making fun of you and not doing all that stuff. And kind of in post, as we were putting it together, we thought, well, we've already sort of shown that devices in this world pop up around the people. This is sort of a language that you guys had sort of established. And why not kind of hold that over so that these kids' devices, as a way of showing how they're all distracted and what's happening, their screens are popping up all over. Like one little girl, Barbara, with the glasses, taking a photo, pops up next to her, and sort of they're texting each other and making fun of him. So we like that idea, but in implementing it, it was and dozens of graphics. Dozens of shots. The graphics had to live in 3D space and they had to live between characters. So James would move his hand and he would mask one out, or one character would be in front of it and it would be kind of covered. We did it also so that they existed in real space, so that certain angles they would be right way, and when you flip to the other side, they would be reversed.
Oh, wow.
And this was before we got our VFX feet. This is before we had tracking boards.
Yeah.
We learned a good lesson about VFX tracking boards later in the game, but at this point we were still using like a Google Doc, being like, I think in this shot it looks off. Man, we were kids.
But it was a real nightmare to get it. Like everything else, we're happy with it, but it was a nightmare getting there.
But that one fateful day where we were like, oh, I think we should have graphics pop up, and this turned into like.
And then every graphic needed a sound effect and a different sound effect. So you have dozens of sound effects just going off all over the place, and like mixing them and trying to figure out what goes where and what's too much, and that was a lot. But the whole point of that scene was to sort of show how they're all so distracted by these devices, and so sort of all the visual and audio noise, I think, really kind of works to sell that, because James's whole argument is that you guys are obsessed with these things and you're distracted and you're missing the real world, which was kind of the point of that scene. So I think it worked out, but yeah, it was real.
But there was a price to be paid. And Tim, so I remember you were going back and forth with the bank graphic that pops up in the car scene, which I loved the way that Lars shot that scene, by the way, the scene in the parking garage.
I love doing
very like a Mr. Robot composition.
Oh, I didn't even shoot that
Avery
scene.
shot that.
Yeah, Avery shot that.
Oh, Avery's got to come on the show then too.
Yeah. I can't remember what I had going on. I had to step out for the last hour, and he shot that. Which I loved too. I saw it and was just like,
it was incredible.
You should be shooting the show.
They did a good job on that for sure. So, Tim, the banking graphic, tell people, when you have to make a graphic, where do you get your assets from? Do you have to pay for them? Are they free? How long do they take to make? What do you use to construct your graphics?
Well, basically, Adobe stock, and for those of you familiar, Adobe has what they call the Adobe Cloud, where you can access like stock and royalty-free imagery to put together like anything you want, which we did in fact use a lot of stock imagery and footage from various outlets such as Getty Images, Pond5, and Adobe Stock. That
we tried to use Pixabay because it's like free for use. Right?
I use Pixabay for everything.
That was the big one.
For some of we did use Pixabay for some of the menial graphics, like photographs of people. I forget what it was.
I got some shirtless photos for the sex scandal news report off of Pixabay, I think. It's always a little tricky when you have faces, but like for bodies and things you can't identify people, you don't need a model release.
Mm-hmm.
As I know, lawyers could, tell me I'm wrong on that. But yeah, so
all of our lawyer stuff is done, so it's like they've signed it.
So like there are a lot of free resources for filmmakers. Like for example, in this episode, we used something called I found online this free Google search for filmmakers. So it's like a fake Google search page called Querio, and it's designed for filmmakers to use it in their films when someone's Googling and not have to deal with the licensing of showing Google. And it looks very similar, but it's its own thing. And similar stuff. You know, for there are a lot of resources for filmmakers and for designers like Pixabay, like Unsplash, like there's a bunch of different sites you can go for sock fee. You know, sometimes they want you to attribute, you know, in the credits. Sometimes they're like, have fun with it. Don't worry about attribution. Creative Commons, Commons 0, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of great resources. You just got to kind of look.
Well, because we had to generate like Peep Face, I think was our FaceTime, and that was the only one that, you know.
Yeah, our Facebook version was Peep Face.
But Tim, so you use Photoshop and you pull these assets, and then how long, like for the banking graphic that you made, how long does that take?
Well, it usually depends like how big the graphic itself is. Like, is it something like big, small, like particularly with the banking graphic, you know, it had to be very simple, you know, showing the dollar sign and then showing like dollar bills behind it. That it had to be something clear and to the point, considering we see it in James' laptop screen, and then we get a bit small glimpse of it when he's in the car, and when you flip out when your funds is completed after you just got your money. Another thing I remember we were doing in that particular episode was when we reshot the scene where you were teaching the kids, and you know, in addition to not knowing all the graphics that we were going to put in there at the time, I remember we wanted to showcase the Lincoln Crossroads School logo in there, but there was just no place for us to put it. So I actually remember the night we wanted to put it on the chalkboard. So
oh God, the chalkboard.
Yeah, remember that.
So basically, it was
the stupidest things that take the most time.
Yep. So it was taking that logo and, you know, just converting it in a way so the VFX department could easily put it on the board. And I think you had to do some handwriting.
I did. So yeah, for the people watching this that saw the show, everything that was written on that chalkboard wasn't written on that chalkboard.
It was all
when
CG.
we filmed it. It's all CG, and like every shot it had to be composited into, and then
And it had to match between shots.
missing from a shot, and then you would
jumping in. Yes, remember that? We would be watching it, and he would be in front of this board with writing, and then it would cut to him, and the board would be empty, and then it would cut back, and the writing
so frustrating. And it would be there, and then it would disappear. Sometimes when the edit would go over to the online, so annoying. And so, but Tim and Mario, talk about Photoshop, how you learned to use it, because that really you guys became like the unsung heroes with your Photoshop skills, because we always needed new assets, new graphics, new app interfaces. You know, you guys both designed the key art, a lot of the trailers, slugs, and everything that, like, total unsung heroes. I'm learning Photoshop now, so I want to actually know how you guys came about it.
For me, Photoshop was just something I decided to learn myself because I thought it would be useful. I knew it was a sort of a program that people were using for this sort of thing. So back in college, you know, years and years ago, I thought, okay, let me sort of learn the basics of this program. So I started doing that. I moved out to LA to find work, and I ended up actually finding my day job, which is in PR, but they were looking for someone who knew Photoshop, and I did. And so I ended up there, and from there my Photoshop skill continued, because that job's a lot of design, it's a lot of layouts, it's a lot of sort of campaigns and that sort of thing. And so I learned a lot about like how to design, you know, interfaces or pieces of content or ads or posters and that sort of thing. And so I spent a lot of time kind of learning that stuff from my day job. And then I just would use it for my own projects on the side. I would design posters for ideas I was working on, just as like inspiration and that sort of thing. And it ended up, you know, and then at the same time, I was starting to learn After Effects, which is Adobe's sort of video. It's sort of their video Photoshop in a lot of ways. A lot of the concepts from Photoshop carry over to After Effects in a lot of ways. You know, but it's in video. And so between the two of those, I had picked up enough that I was able to jump in on certain things, like when we needed logos erased, I was able to go in there and kind of paint those out based on stuff I've learned, or based on like hours and hours of tutorials, just watching, trying to figure out that stuff. So really it was just self-taught, just watching a lot of videos, learning, doing yourself, and you just kind of get better the more you do it.
That's the indie spirit, though. You know?
I felt like it made me more. It made me more self-reliant, which I think is important. You know, I don't need to now rely on someone. If I want to, like, I just worked on a short for a friend, that I EP'd, and I also edited. And there are a bunch of VFX that needs to be done in the short, and there's no budget for that. And I was just, okay, let me just quickly drop them into After Effects. Let me do them. There were like 15 VFX shots. Took a while, but I was able to do them all. And so that I found out that like I learned enough, and I learned more while doing that I was able to kind of, get these shots done. Whereas you would have had to pay another artist, a ton of money to do it if I didn't know that stuff.
No, you saved us in a bind a lot, and Tim too. Real quick, a little birdie named Lars messaged me. His parents are there, and he has to go soon. So my last question for Lars was, "What was your favorite day of shooting?" And then we'll allow you to leave. What was
Every day with Roxy.
Every day with Roxy. That's right. That's the answer.
Obviously that, but what was your favorite scene that you challenged you, or was most fun, or
I will say I don't know if it was my favorite, but the most challenging was the big overnight.
Yeah.
Was just brutal. If you don't know what an overnight is, it's you essentially start when the sun goes down, and you shoot until the sun comes up, and it was the big climax where you got a bunch of people coming into a house and giant night exterior.
So many pages.
And it's like, and we just didn't have a massive lighting package. We didn't have big generators, so it was very scrappy, very indie. And so trying to light a really big forest at nighttime outside without any kind of influence of practicals, meaning it has to look like moonlight essentially, with like car headlights was a challenge for sure. And but everything, I thought it looked really fun.
We had shootouts, we had interiors, we had exteriors, we had people running. That was a rough.
I'll never forget the drive home though, because that sun came up and I was driving home and I just shot for 14 or 15 hours. I can't remember how long.
Roxy doesn't remember the drive home.
Really, truthfully,
no, I booked a motel, Lars. I'm surprised you didn't. I had to sleep.
I was like singing songs at the top of my lungs, and then I would start to go into like dreams about the lyrics.
That was
no, don't ever do that. You have a family. You don't live
and I do remember what got me home. It was driving in the carpool lane illegally. That's what got me home. It was so exhilarating, the fear of potentially getting caught by the police and having to pay $470 fine or whatever.
You have extreme thrill issues, dude.
I do.
It was also really bright that morning when driving. It was like real, and I was just like, I am not in the mood for this kind of life.
Do you remember the traffic on the?
Yes, it was awful because we were shooting.
Lars was right to do the carpool lane. It was terrible. I was like, everyone's gonna die going back.
It was awful. I was fading so fast. So yeah, I just like snuck into that carpool lane.
I think I snuck into it too.
That's what did it. Yeah.
Because it was in Thousand Oaks. Where were we?
Yeah. We were in Thousand Oaks or somewhere up there.
Oh boy. Okay, well, Lars, you have to go, but we wish you luck tomorrow on Emmy night. Congratulations.
Love you, Lars.
Thanks so much for bringing me on, guys. Really
you have to come back.
Yeah.
Come back to our show.
You guys. Okay. Thanks so much, guys.
Bye, Lardy.
Bye.
I know I brought it back. All right, and we can wrap up too. But Tim, did you your Photoshop? How did you learn it? Because you definitely upgraded your skills throughout this shoot, learning new things. And now you do key art. He did our key art for Circle, poster that you see on Netflix, which people still compliment a lot.
Well, I started. I know I'm going to date myself here when I say this, but I started working on Photoshop like back in the early days when it first started to make its way to the market, like in the early 2000s. And this was like before the Adobe Cloud. This was before YouTube. So basically, you really had to, try to find like any resources you could in which to learn the program. And because mind you, there wasn't like a whole lot of it wasn't as easy to learn a program back then as it is now. Like as Mario was saying, with After Effects, which is just another version of Photoshop, which is for video, and it was harder to learn that back then because information and videos were just so limited that what I did in the earlier version, like probably in the early to mid 2000s, was, if anybody is old enough to remember this, there used to be this site called goodtutorials.com, which had like, this collection of all these Photoshop tutorials. And even though they weren't videos, it was just step-by-step instructions on, how to do particular effects. And I just found that, doing that just made you more confident by just doing like the tutorials themselves. It made you more aware of, what Photoshop has to offer. And what's great about the program itself, you can literally do anything from like editing photos or actually painting to even doing production art, which is something I had to do a lot of in that show. And what I mean by production art, we touched on this episode 1 with Ethan in the apartment and having to redo that photo for many reasons. So
the prom photo wasn't.
Yeah, I think if you're making content, if you're a filmmaker and you're making your own stuff in your indie, that I don't love that Photoshop is a subscription, but if you can get a discount on it, you can get like a student discount, or a teacher discount if you know a teacher. I'm not, but if you have access to that, however.
Right now during quarantine, they're giving it for. They are. I was like, I'm going to cancel mine, and they're like, oh, we'll give it to you at a just free.
Yeah, they've been good about quarantine stuff because everyone's saving, but for $30 or for whatever it is, if you're consistently making content, it is a great suite of programs to have. It's really helpful. There were plenty of times, where I'm trying to, even like, if you're trying to work with sounds that aren't playing well with your edit suite, if you're editing in Premiere, drop them into Adobe Audition, export them as a wave. There are all sorts of little things. Adobe Media Encoder has been hugely helpful in sort of delivering product, like, if you need a certain codec or that sort of thing. So it's a suite of programs that if you take the time to learn as an indie filmmaker, it allows you to do things that you would have had to have 5 other people do. So it is helpful in that regard.
You guys inspired me with your Photoshop skills. I'll never be as good as y'all, but I'm
just doing it.
One thing I will say about Photoshop, which wasn't available a couple of years ago, is that Photoshop has incorporated like a new 3D program, so you can actually start like putting in 3D objects into your photograph. And with some of the production art imagery with young Amy and her father, a lot of the assets that you see in there were actually 3D models that were imported.
Oh yeah, I remember that. Yep.
And I had to work with Mario on one particular image where we wanted to put a picture frame behind. Yeah. And basically it wasn't a case of could we do it, it was a matter of, okay, we're gonna have to put our brains together on this. So basically I was able to get like a royalty free 3D model, and we were able to pose it to be on the back of the wall, and Mario and I were on our Skype call like, okay, does that look good?
It's all about making sure the perspective was right, so when you looked at it, it looked like it was really behind her and that you were looking at it the right way. That was tricky. I totally forgot about that.
Little things that pop up on the screen for and they took hours and hours of work.
Right.
But what originally got you into Photoshop, Tim? You just downloaded it and used...
Well, basically, my background is in drawing and painting, and back in the early 2000s, there were like stylists, but they weren't as sophisticated as they are now. So basically,
wait, all of you should follow T Nard on Instagram because his sketches are fucking incredible. Like,
thank you, Miss
and your art is so amazing. Like, I'm always blown away by what
he's an award-winning artiste.
Yes,
he won. What was the award you won? The Scholastic. That
same company that publishes the Harry Potter books.
Well, award-winning.
Make sure to follow him on Instagram.
Thank you, Miss Roxy.
Yeah, and we definitely learned that you had a lot more skills than you let on as this went along. We're like, oh, Tim can do this too. Oh, Tim can do that. Oh, Mario can do that. Oh, Tim and Mario can do that.
A lot of dumping on Tim. Tim, could you handle this?
And I always email. I'm always like, we should make this graphic. We, as in like I'm helping.
And then Michael, you and I drink wine at your house.
yeah. We just watch. Like, yeah, that looks pretty. That looks cool. Can you do Photoshop?
No, what's Photoshop?
Yeah, we need to learn.
I can't do it. I
One
can't.
thing
I'm learning. It's complex with all the
It's
layers.
too hard. I'm too old for this.
Then you
I'm too
become
old to
second,
learn.
like, and you, what the way I found that, like, you get really good, comfortable, and then you learn a little extra thing, and then you work that into your every day,
Yeah.
and you realize that you've built this library of skills that this program can do, and there's still plenty more you need to learn, but like it's just about using it, consistently, for projects, and like I
Oh,
would do
yeah, it came in
a
handy.
ton
on
of
it.
different ways to paint out things that I did not know on dark web. That I could drop a shot into, After Effects, do a little bit of motion tracking, and I can erase, no problem. But in dark web, I was painting out by hand, each frame because I didn't know another way to do it. So it's
Yeah.
use it, I think.
I remember that we'd find like little logos and be like, we don't want to ask Rob to do this again.
Hey, can you guys imagine how much you've grown throughout this whole process? Like how much more knowledgeable you are, your toolkit, everything.
Huge.
One thing I would say too, from a post-production standpoint and doing like the various artwork, graphic art, conceptual art, and production art, much like Lars, you look back at what you did and then you contrast it to now and how you would have done things back then, and you would have said, oh, if I had to do it all over, I'd be far more competent this time. And that applies to everything with this production, including like the artwork. Like Mario, I remember there would be days where you would ask me in some of the particular production art, you would ask me like, yeah, can you DH? I'd be on the phone with you. Can you DH someone? Yeah, I can do that. So,
I think we all did that.
it really pushed the limits to what I knew about Photoshop and what I was able to do and what I had to learn how to do at the moment. And if anything, YouTube definitely saved all of our butts in this particular case, because if there was something we didn't know how to do technically, you can easily go on YouTube and just figure out like how to do it.
Yeah, it's like necessity of invention. Like you learn things by being forced to do them, like being confronted with an issue that you need to fix, and you just learn how to fix it. And there you go.
Leap and the net will catch you.
Yes.
Sometimes. Okay. Well, does anybody else have any other things they want to say about chapter 3? Otherwise, we'll put a fork in this and adjourn. And next time we will talk about chapter 4.
Ooh, chapter 4.
Friends.
Blackheart, right? Blackheart.
That's a complicated episode. Lots of locations between the streets and the A story, so we'll have a lot to talk about. We'll bring Renee on.
Yeah.
Emmy-nominated Renee Hager, also a Circle alum, and that'll be a fun chat. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Tomorrow's the big Emmy night.
I know. Yeah. This will air after that, so
fingers crossed.
Hopefully, we're in a good mood if we have good things to share next time. And if we don't, bring the wine.
Oh, you guys,
there'll be wine anyway.
So great. I think it's so good for your health.
And on that note, goodbye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Okay.
Hi, everyone.
Wait, I'm just I'm ending the recording. We'll still do our little
hang out.